Now, here's the thing with unmuted. I feel that if we are exposing a problem or we're bringing something to the forefront, we want to always give solutions. So, as best that I can, I like to bring in resources, bring in people, refer people, because I'm just me. And I like to use who I know and what I know to help others. But without further ado, I present to some and introduce to others Dr. Maranda Griffin. Hey, Doc.
Hello. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be unmuted.
Yes, I am excited to have you on. Of course, it would not be without some kind of technical difficulty in the first show. Thankfully, my son from college was able to get in and get us squared away. So, um, how are you?
I'm doing good.
That's good. That's good. I've seen that you have been living your best life.
Every day, trying to.
Yes, ma'am. So you're on, everyone can see you, they can hear you. I want to first start off with you telling the people a little bit about yourself. And then we'll ease into the question set and just have a little conversation about tonight's topic. How's that?
Sounds good. So, I am a native of Alabama and I first met you through the military. So, I am retired from the military, Air Force, Air National Guard. From a career perspective, my background is in education, counseling, and psychology, counselor education, and supervision. So I currently work in higher education and administrative role as an associate dean. And in my spare time, I enjoy coaching, counseling, doing grant writing, and really just helping people and agencies maximize the potential for which they are on this earth.
Yes, and you are great at what you do. You really are. I thank you. I feel pulled from classes with you, sessions with you all the time. You're in my head more than you know, but you know. All right, so I want to get started on tonight, and well, we're gonna dive in, and I want to how you see fit and at your own discretion disclose how much of what you want to discuss. I'm going to start off with one question. Um, my first question is um, how does or how did being adopted affect you once you how did that affect you? Well, now, first of all, how did you tell me about your journey of finding out you were adopted? Let's start there.
Okay. So I learned that I was adopted when I was around 10 years old. It was a summer. During that particular summer, I was going to summer school, not because I was not progressing favorably academically, but it was just for additional enrichment at the time. And there was an older child there at summer school with me who was aware of my adoption, and he thought to share it with me. So when he shared that with me, I immediately responded back in opposition to his
Mm,
claim. And we had somewhat of a heated exchange. And the teacher became aware of this. And so, midday, when it was time for my father to pick me up, the teacher shared with him what had occurred because she noticed that I was upset. And so once we got home, that forced him and my mom to disclose to me or to share that I was adopted. And so for me was something that I internalized.
mm,
So I went inward. And in going inward with that information, I really began a self-loathing cycle, if you will. And now that I'm older and I've really sat with what was going on at that time, Satan recognized that my young brain saw adoption as something that was bad. And so he capitalized on the opportunity. And what would happen, I would torment myself with my own dialogue. So those conversations that we have inside of our head, I was having that conversation with myself, telling myself what adoption meant, because I didn't really know uh, anything about it other than the parents that I had been knowing as parents weren't really my parents. And so I clung to every negative aspect about adoption that you could imagine until I came across God's perspective on adoption. And so in Ephesians 1 and 5, it says, in love, he predestined us to be adopted. So that's the first part of that scripture. And then in another scripture in Jeremiah 1 and 5, he talks about having known us before he formed us in the womb. And so once I started to be in relationship with him and to learn what he had to say about adoption, that began to change my perspective. And so I began to then see adoption as a gift, because I had actually been chosen by this family who, wanted a child. They desired a child. And so I was a blessing to that household because my mother's womb was barren. And they were a blessing to me because the mother who had birthed me was not in a place at that time in her life to have a child in tow. So that's how adoption affected me a little bit from the beginning of my story to the maturation of my story, if you will.
Okay. And I want to, so I was adopted when I was 18 months old. And my sister under me, which actually that recently passed away, she was 6 weeks old, and we were blessed to be adopted together. My adopted mother and my biological grandmother had a relationship that allowed us to still know our biological family. And I consider that a blessing because oftentimes that does not happen. You lose your family.
Mhm.
But I understand because I understand how certain things affect you in your journey when you're young, because I had a desire to be with my mother. Um, I had a desire to be with my mother, and knowing her bits because I didn't see her often. She wasn't, you know, she wasn't able, and she moved away. But I knew her, but I didn't know her. So I tormented myself, a lot as well, and internalized because all I wanted was to be with my biological mother, because at that time I didn't understand. Growing up, I did, and it was almost as if it didn't matter um how well I might have had it. It was just something in me, as a child, you just don't understand. You do internalize that. And it does
Mhm.
affect you. So I want to ask you, was your journey with adoption, was it a joyful or disheartening journey for you, or was it both? You found out at
Mhm.
10 it's something that you internalized. You knew that what you see now, that it was a blessing because you were chosen. But sometimes we do deal with feeling maybe rejected or abandoned or thrown away, because we don't understand. So how was that for
So I was similar in age as you. I was 2 years old when I was adopted. And like you, there's this innate desire, once you're aware of that, no matter how great and good those circumstances are and the environment that you in is, to be connected to know and be in relationship with your biological family, your roots. So my journey was a little bit of both. And so I'm going to try to take you through that chronologically so that you did and the listeners understand it in a similar way as my experience. So my journey began disheartening for me because one, the information came to me in a way that I could have never anticipated. My parents, my adoptive parents, they weren't prepared for that on that day. They thought it was going to be a normal routine day where they picked me up, we went home, we had dinner, and we did what we did. But then they were rendered, they were incapacitated a bit by that information. So they had to then make a decision to, share with me that I was adopted. I don't know if they would have ever shared that information with me had that altercation not occurred on that playground. So initially it was disheartening until, as I said, I began to take perspective, and that perspective then began to shape my mindset, and that mindset then became one of joy. And so that joy continued to abound for me as I grew in age as well as in wisdom. So my adoption was a closed adoption. So what that meant is that my adoptive family was not aware of who my biological family was. So they did have a birth certificate for me, and there was some identifying information on that birth certificate that eventually helped me to begin to close gaps in my story. But it wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I sought to find my biological mother. And I think the reason that I did that is because at age 16, my adoptive mother died after about a 7-year diagnosis with Alzheimer's. And so there was that void. Every young girl desires their mother. We want to emulate those mothers. And so I think that's why I really had that initial innate desire, is because my mother was gone. So it was in my early 20s that I began to use the information that was available to me, to use the internet, and then to use public records at the time to begin to piece that together. And so I was successful in being able to connect with her, to hear her story, which continued to erode and to help dispel all of those negative messages that I had carried, just lies really about the adoption itself. And so I recognized in listening to her story, which I could tell she had some regret around, and I released her from any of those feelings that she was carrying based on that decision that she had made. But as you know, no matter how much we try to help someone else, they have to come to awareness on their own and accept those things on their own. But I wanted to make sure that I had done my to do that. And so what I learned in listening to her story is it, in fact, took wisdom and courage for her at such a young age in her 20s and young adulthood to recognize that the life that she was living at that time was not one was conducive to having a child. It just was not the best environment. And aside from her recognizing that, we are in the early to mid 70s in West Alabama, where the governor had not long stood in the doorsteps of the University of Alabama and declared now, today, and forever. And so it was not embraced by the community for this Caucasian woman to have an African-American baby. I mean, that's just the reality. And then it was at her death, which was in my early 30s, that I began to become connected with the family that I thought was my paternal family. And so my adoptive father had been such a significant person in my life and throughout my childhood that I never really even felt a need to connect with the paternal side of my family at all. I just didn't feel like there was any voids there. There wasn't any gaps. So I thought. But my adopted dad died in 2021 after well beyond 80 2007. And prior to his death, I had often wondered about, well, what would that loss do to me? I had already incurred so many different types of loss in my life. And I had thought that, oh, when he dies, this might be the one that really cripples me, because we had been together for 44 years of life, which was almost, well, that was 28 more years than I had with my adoptive mother. So it was just the two of us. But even in his death, I began to take perspective about the long life that he had lived, and how that I had just really benefited from it. And not only I was able to benefit from his life, and I know this is long, but it's going to connect in a minute, but also my children had benefit from his life. And so in December, right prior to his death, in December of 2020, he died February 2021, I gifted myself a subscription to Ancestry. And I did so because I was interested not in finding more family members, because again, I thought that circle was complete. But I gifted it because I was interested in the ethnic heritage, because some of my colleagues, peers, and friends had shared how they were able to trace their roots all the way back from slave trade coming into the U.S. And I just thought, wow, that's phenomenal. So I gifted myself a subscription to Ancestry. And during that same time that I had gifted myself that subscription, I was preparing my heart for my adoptive father's transition. I had set him up with home health care, and he died in February of 2021. And in just a few months later, April of 2021, I began getting connections on Ancestry. Some 8 months would pass from those initial connections that forever changed my life in my adoption story, which really solidified a disheartening experience from early age to one of complete joy. And so in December of 2021, just 5 days shy of my adoptive dad's birthday, I learned that I had 6 biological siblings, and I was connected to the paternal side of my family. So if you recall, I said that I thought I had met my paternal side of my family in my 30s at my mom's funeral, but come to find out that that was not actually my paternal family at all, that I had a paternal family that I never knew anything about. And so to say that I was overwhelmed is an understatement. Yet it was the best gift that I could have ever been given that I never knew that I had. And in that conversation that I was having with one of my younger sisters, who helped to bring us together, I immediately felt connected, which is a lot for me, because I don't typically convey affective emotion in the same way that other people do. Like I literally felt that the hair on my arms was standing up as we were having a conversation. I was just so energized by it. And so fast forward three weeks after that conversation, and I was at home with my biological family and siblings. We spent Christmas together last year for the first time. And so opportunity isn't always recognized, because we can often overlook it because we're looking for deficits. So for me, I didn't feel like I had any deficits in life. I felt like, oh, I'm good. Life is good. And so prior to knowing this side of my family, I felt complete, because I didn't feel devoid of any familial type relationships or anything of that nature. But little did I know that I would receive this purposeful gift of my biological family and how enriching they would be to my lives. And so it's nothing that I prayed about. My paternal father hadn't prayed about it either. He had no idea until last April that there was even another child that he had bore with someone. So neither of us were looking for each other, but we found each other. And so where I am now in this adoption story, as you likely can tell, is I'm just giddy, I'm filled with excitement, and I'm filled with joy. And so I have taken full advantage of meeting this part of my family. I'm completely leaning in. My arms are wide open, as are theirs.
And that is that's a testament in itself. I believe, and I've watched it a bit through social media because I actually do remember you posting that you
Mhm.
gifted yourself ancestry. So I kind of, I remember seeing that and bits and pieces that you did want to share on social media, and sometimes I'm hit and miss. So, and I do remember I was preparing just mentally preparing for my next season. And, I usually pray about what I'm going to do and how I'm in the different topics and who my guests are. And lo and behold, um, I saw a post and you were talking about your family, which is which
Mhm.
is amazing. And I like that you don't discredit that you don't discredit your adoptive parents, and you don't discredit your biological parents. You understand, you see the empathy in the situation, and you like you said, you released your mother. And I so understand, understand that, being adopted myself, um years ago, I that was something that, it was hard for me to talk about. So just having this particular episode topic in itself, because I had a hard time dealing with not necessarily the adoption itself, the um, non-existent relationship that I had with my biological mother. Because like you say, we had that yearning desire, that innate, to want to be with them, and
Mhm.
life happens. Everyone's story is not the same. So my story is a little bit different, and so it was really hard for me dealing with if at a point in my life I could not talk about it. I
Mhm.
could not talk about her
Mhm.
without breaking down. So it was not a subject that I talked about at all. And that's one of the reasons most people don't know that I was adopted. It's not that I hid it. It's just the emotions and the hurt and the grief behind it. I wasn't there. And I had to give.
Yeah, oh, I was just going to say, I remember when you reached out to me after having read that information that I shared on Facebook, and I was shocked. Like when you shared that you were also adopted, I was like, wow, all that time we spent together talking about several different, things that were close and dear to your heart. That was not one of them, but I fully understand
Yeah.
why you weren't sharing that information, because scripture tells us above all to guard our hearts. And
Mhm.
even when I reached out, sought to meet my biological mom in my 20s, I did just that. Like I had my best friend, we were there sitting together. She called her, and she presented the information in such a way to make sure that my heart was protected. And
Mm.
so she said that there's someone from your past that wants to connect with you. And we just want to know if you're open to connecting with them. She had no idea if it was, a former boyfriend, a family member, whom it
Mhm.
was. And she asked for some hints and some clues. But ultimately, she said yes. And so, it worked out. But even in choosing to approach that conversation in that way, I was trying to protect myself, because you do have to be ready for anything. And what,
Mhm.
we want to protect our hearts if we can. It's not always possible. So I fully understand what that experience may have been like for you as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I do want to, and I told you a while back I was going to get your book. Because first of all, I am a supporter. But for those of you that don't know, I really adore. I call her Doc all the time because I call you Doc. I'm gonna call you by your credentials, even though, but I really do, and I support as well. But I wanted to go into this right because I really try to go into anything that I do in a spirit of excellence. So I noticed that your first chapter, in the book is surviving abandonment and rejection. So this is before you found, your newfound, on your journey now, before you really found out, or in the light that you're in now. So can you kind of discuss that a little bit now? But before you answer that, before you start on that, the book is Armed and Dangerous, a collection of triumphant testimonies workbook by Dr. Miranda Griffin. Let me see. Can you see this? Yeah, make sure you can see this. So, please, you want to go out and get this. If you have not, we'll make sure you get the links and everything. But this is, you want to go out and get this. All right, okay, Doc. So talk about, and I don't think it was by chance or by happenstance that it's chapter number 1. So go into that a little bit for us.
So, one of the things that happens when you internalize anything, it doesn't have to be adoption, but when you internalize something, it means that you look within yourself for to be the reason for blame, when that's not necessarily the case. So, one of the spirits that attaches itself to adoptees is a feeling of abandonment and a feeling of rejection. And so those are the weights that are connected to it. And so I talk about that in that very first chapter of the book about my experience. I tell about that playground story of being 10 years old and finding out that information, and not knowing, how that, back in the day, we used to say sticks and stones will never hurt me. No, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But that's such a lie, because it's the words that hurt you more than the sticks and stones do. And so with that, what I talk about in that chapter is not only that 10-year-old self and that experience and that internalizing, but how I then began to lean into even peer relationships and intimate relationships that would reinforce abandonment and rejection. And so even in doing so, there were things I was doing to fit in with my friends that I didn't need to do. There were things that I was doing in relationship to be accepted, sometimes things in desperation, acting outside of my purpose. And all of that comes with, again, that spirit of abandonment and rejection, until you recognize how that's working against you, and until you embrace the beauty of, no, before I was formed in my mother's womb, I was predestined. I was foreknown. There was a plan for my life. There was a purpose for my life. While I may not understand why at 2 years old this happened, now in my 40s, I fully recognize why it happened. I can say that I know that I would not be who I am today had this not been the path for me to traverse.
And that was going to be one of my questions. Well, actually, that's on the list, but we kind of answered some of the questions in different orders or whatnot. How adoption is a part of your journey, but how it's a part of your journey, how it's made you the person that you are. Because I would say for me, I would, and some people will say, you get churchy and this or that, but you have to pull from something to make it through anything. And, like yourself, pulling from the scripture, pulling from the word, to make it through, making the scripture come to life, to make it through, to pour yourself out, because that's what happens. you're dealing with this, you're dealing with that, and some people don't understand, or maybe they do, it's just different causes for it. We tend to do this or do that because we're looking for something, we're yearning for something that we don't have, but we're going about it the wrong way. We really know we shouldn't be in these relationships, but because it's a void and we really don't know how to fill that void, you gravitate to this and you gravitate to that, or you're befriending people that you shouldn't befriend. That man or that woman is not really for you, but because you're looking for love, that's how you look for love in the wrong place. I like to say, and I say this now, that I really relate to Joseph in the Bible. If anybody was to ask, well, how, a person that you will relate, I relate to Joseph in the Bible because it seems like in every stage of my life when I needed to be pulled out is of a pit, even if it was a self-inflicted pit because of something that I was dealing with that I didn't quite understand. He favored me in the pit. He pulled me out
Mhm.
at the nick of time. So some things that should have taken me out, I got by unscathed. But it was the root, it was the foundation. And it sounds like, even, and I would let you say, but it sounds like you kind of went through something of the similar, wherein your mother wasn't in the position to take care of you and give you what you needed. But God had someone for you. I
Mhm.
know for myself that if it wasn't for the foundation, the grounding that my adoptive mother put in me, I would not have made it through some things that I made it through in my life. Now, I don't discredit, I don't discount what my biological mother, put in me, because I had the opportunity to actually go back and live with my biological mother. Um, that's something else, in its own. But I had that opportunity. But if it wasn't for the root, if it was, because I got old raising, that's what I like to call it. My biological mother and my grandmother were about the same age, so I
Mhm.
got old raising,
I
and
did
I
too.
needed that. Yes. So I
Like
needed that. Yeah.
when my adoptive family got me, I think they were like somewhere between 42 and 48 if I did the math. And so I say that they were old my entire life. Like
Hmm.
they were grandparent aged when they got me. And there was a little shame and embarrassment about that from time to time based on some of the clothes that I would wear and
Hmm.
some of the things that I could not do. But what I didn't recognize in real time, but now certainly appreciate, is when you're raised by older people, especially in the South, you're going
Hmm.
to be raised in the church and you're going to
Hmm.
have a strong foundation. You're going to have a strong work ethic and you're going to have
Hmm.
some wisdom beyond your years.
Hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. I can. Someone said testify. I can testify to that.
Mhm.
So I want to ask, what are the three best traits your parents instilled in your upbringing?
Mhm. So I think I just shared them. Faith,
Mm-hmm.
first and foremost. I felt like we had an assigned seat in church. The very first church I remember was North Highland Baptist Church in Dothan, Alabama, and we sat on the third pew, right behind Miss Hart, who sat on the second pew, and we sat on the end of that pew. I thought that was our pew. So faith, first and foremost. Then the example of a strong work ethic. So I watched both of my adoptive parents, who are entrepreneurs, because they were so much older. They were born in the 20s. So
Mm-hmm.
they went through a time where, Black people had to to create their own. So they had their own businesses. So having that strong work ethic, my adoptive father continued to work well into his 80s. Not out of necessity, but just out of the sheer enjoyment of giving back and being engaged in life. And then the other piece of that is covenant relationship. And what I mean by covenant relationship was the example that he provided through continuing to be a husband when his wife was streamers at a relatively young age at the time. He could have abandoned her and left me there. But he stayed and he served. So he really honored what the covenant relationship meant in marriage, because he watched decline to the point of, having an infant mind. She didn't know who she was, who we were, and things of that nature. So I think those are the three things that really stand out for me from that household.
Okay. So faith, work ethic, and covenant relationship. I love the covenant relationship. Definitely the work ethic, and I know that to be true of you since I've known you in the military, and that's actually one of the things that I teach my son. Two things that cannot be taken away from you. One is your education. When you have it, you have it. No one can take it away from you. And your work ethic. A strong work ethic would take you very far. It's nothing like having a strong work ethic and having the education back. You can do anything with God on your side, and those two things, you can definitely go far. Let's see. So there are so many people that deal with or have dealt with or are dealing with adoption. And everyone's story is different because we're all, our own individual. Why, the whys behind it, the what, the who's is all different. Your journey has been your journey, and finding out the way you did when you were young, the process throughout your life, growing up with it, losing your biological mother at a pivotal time in your life. 16, was it?
Yeah.
The time when a young lady definitely, needs that, or wants, and we really need that mother figure, for your adoptive father to stay and to hone in on the relationship and continue to nurture you and love you, then to later find, and let me pause because I'm going to say something that just kind of dropped on me. Right? It's so ironic, and God is so strategic because He would not let you be alone. It just dawned on me. Recapping some of what we discussed, He would not let you be alone. Your biological father, your adoptive father, was transitioning, but He allowed you to find your true biological father before. Nothing missing, nothing lacking. He gave you back, He gave you double for your shame, for your trouble. What hurt you back then, you didn't understand, but how he turned that thing around later. And look at your ladder. He still allowed you to get nurturing and everything that you needed from your adoptive parents because it made you who you are today. But He was not going to let you be alone when your adoptive father transitioned on. Okay.
Yeah, he certainly restored the years that the locusts and the cankerworms thought that they had eaten up. And I mean, my biological, so I had one set of gifts in my adoptive father. The gifts inside of my biological father, like there were certain things, I've had so many countless aha moments in life since having met him and that side of my family that silly me thought were things that I had just come up with and was doing all on my own. only to find out that they came through the bloodline. It's in my DNA. And so one of the things that he does, he has a big personality. He has a lot of energy, but he pours in me through the words that he conveys out of his mouth. He's a man that is not afraid to pour in. He calls me queen. He sends me text messages that just light me all the way up inside and out. And it's everything that little girl, and that the little girl that is within all of us adult women, when we've been in relationships that we shouldn't have been in, or we stayed beyond the expiration date, or we did things that we didn't need to do to try to sustain the relationship, and on and on and on. He's pouring all of that stuff into me. And it's just a great time in life. I'm ripe for it. I say that these are my enlightenment years. I had heard that once you hit 40 as a woman, things just open up, and I'm just open and absorbing it all. And I'm excited, yeah, because like you said, God saw fit that I wouldn't have a period in my life without a father. And I have the father and a father, and I'm so excited about it.
So I have two things on what you just said. Now we have a few comments because we are
Okay.
so we're streaming. I'm using two different platforms. So I'm watching from my regular page and I'm watching from the unmuted page. But I do want to say I took two things from that. I took from what you said. One, he affirms you. He affirms you. And two, I don't know if you realized this. I'm sure you have, but if you haven't, I'm gonna say it anyway. He gives you what you give others. That's why he pours into you. He's pouring back into you because he's giving you what he's pouring into you, what you pour out. Because sitting up under you, being up in your coaching program, you may send me a text, or you may affirm me, and you would pour into me in our sessions, and even in the work that we did, and when you would give me my feedback, you were pouring back into me. He's giving you, pouring back into you what you pour out. So it's almost as if, how I say, your cup runneth over. Your cup is running over. So we have a few people on that have left some comments. No one really has a question. If you do have a question, I'm looking right now. You can ask a question. But there is a Linda Phillips. I'll pin that there. She took note of your faith, work ethic, and covenant relationship. She said this is solid. This is one. She also said another. She said the two of you are setting souls free with your authentic stories. And that is what Unmuted is all about. It's freeing us and giving us a release as much as it is pouring into someone else and letting someone else know. Because someone, just like, there was a time I could not talk about this. There was a time you struggled with this. Someone is there right now. Someone is in that struggle right now. Someone is stuck. Someone is muted from this very situation that we're discussing right now. So, in saying that, and as we start to wind down a little bit, I want you to talk about your coaching program and let the people know how they can reach out to you. I'll make sure that I come back and I pin everything in the comments for individuals that want to utilize your services. But let people know, because I don't call you Doc just to call you Doc. You really are Doc. Let people know how they can find you, how they can reach out to you, your website, about your book, and I'll make sure I pin everything in the comments.
Okay, so I'll start with my website. It's mgconsultation.com, and my Facebook page is the same, mgconsultation.com. So on that website, you'll find out a little bit about me, a little bit about some of the work that I have done professionally, and you'll find information about coaching, consultation, and counseling. I also am an author. I've written 2 of my own books, and I've been featured in a number of textbooks. And my counseling, I'm licensed to provide counseling in the states of Alabama, Florida, and Michigan. I primarily provide telehealth services, so that's using technology to facilitate video live sessions with individuals. And then my coaching efforts focus around helping individuals reach their goals. Well, one, identifying the goals, identifying if there are any barriers or things that impede their ability to accomplish their goals, and helping them to develop a plan to reach the goals, and then watching them begin to do so. And I do that because, like I said at the beginning in introducing myself, I want people to live maximized. My tagline is, I believe in people, and I want to see people win. And so sometimes we don't recognize or understand how to cultivate what's in our hand. Sometimes that can be clouded by some of life's experiences and challenges, possibly from that internalizing that we've already talked about tonight. But I just take a strengths-based approach with meeting a person where they are and calling out things that need to be called out. And if you're not ready, you're not ready. And I'll let you know that. And we'll resume when you are. So that's kind of my approach, is just trying to help a person cultivate, because I always say that I want to do everything that I was placed on this earth to do, and that God died on that cross for me to do. I don't want to waste the life that he gave for me. And so people say all the time, you're doing something else. Isn't this enough? Haven't you accomplished enough? No, I haven't. As long as I have breath in my body and there's opportunity before me, I'm going to seize everything that I'm supposed to seize, so that I make good on that blood.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I am not doing too much. I am doing what he is allowing and enabling me to do. Well, Dr. Miranda, I want to thank you for coming on. Hold on. Wait a minute. We have a question. I told you I was going from 2 different platforms. So I have a question. How do you maintain a healthy marriage, an ambitious work ethic, parenting, social life, let's see, while maintaining a personal relationship with your God? What order do you place these?
That's a great question.
So that was Sergeant
So,
Baskin asking this question.
mhm, mhm. So you have to set aside time for yourself, despite being a wife, a mother, an employee, a business owner, whatever is in your wheelhouse. You have to remember self. And so you can't expend all of your energy, all of those roles, and leave nothing for self. So you have to make sure that you're taking care of you, even if it means 10 minutes fewer time with your kids, an hour less time with your spouse. Because if you're deplete, you can't give to anybody else. You can't be the best employee. You can't be the best wife that you want to be, nor the best mother that you want to be. So first and foremost, making sure that you're attending to your own needs, remembering to laugh, to smile, and to enjoy. We work hard. Marriage is tough. It's a job. Don't often say that, but it's a job. And as with anything, you have to continue to perfect to continue to stretch and grow if it's going to be healthy and what you need it to be. We recognize when it's not healthy, and we have to attend to that. So for me, it's about making sure I'm doing the things I need to do for myself, enjoying life outside of being a mom, a wife, a woman of faith, an employee, and recognizing when I need to take something off my plate. Because it's so easy to put, everything that comes to you on your plate, and you just can't do it. Unfortunately, everything's not for you, and it may not be in season. So recognizing that and allocating the amount of time that you need. So, even every day I have time to myself. Like, there's time when I tell the kids, you got to leave out the room. It's my time now. I'm watching TV, or I'm listening to an audiobook, or I'm just laying here with my thoughts. So that's a little bit of how I approach it. So to sum all that up, make sure you set aside time for yourself. Make sure you assess what's on your plate and recognize when you might need to take something off your plate to have that balance that you need, and to continue to develop in each of those areas so that they are healthy and operating in the way that you desire.
And your personal relationship with God. It was another part of his question.
Yeah, so that personal relationship with God. So for me, because being in the house of the Lord was something that was instilled in me early on, that's still inherently a part of my life. I recognize God outside of just him in the Bible. So, there's a scripture that talks about even the rocks will cry out. I'm able to look at nature and appreciate God in nature. When the wind blows, when it's 90 to 100 degrees outside, and that breeze through, I recognize that as God. Even in listening to secular music, rap, I can still hear God. I can still see God operating and working. And so for me, it's about personal relationship. And I'm currently in a phase in life where that personal relationship trumps religion, and it trumps routine. And so I'm good with me. I'm good with me, and I know that God is good with me because he created me exactly the way that I am. And so I'm not going to live a lie or a facade and try to be something that I'm not, but just to be who I am and continue to give him the praise, honor, and glory throughout. So that's a little bit. And also knowing who you're connected to is so important in your faith walk. You have to be connected to people that energize you. So when you're connected to people that are pulling on you and in such a way that it's depleting. But I have people, I have friends that I know who to go to when I need somebody to travail, to pray. I know who I need to go to when I want to turn up, whether that's turning up in an entertainment way or turning up for Jesus. I know who I need to go to when I just want to vent. And so you have to recognize your connections and leverage those connections as you continue to build and develop that faith. And so faith is the foundation. Everything else may fail and fall, but faith will always last and stand. And so that's going to be forever important in my life.
I agree, with your personal relationship, and with God, and finding God and seeing God and recognizing God outside of the Bible. Because I'll tell people, listen, what you and God got going on is what you and God got going on. Because what me and God got going on is what me and God got going on. I can't tell you how God is dealing with you, what he said to you. I know how he's dealing with me. I know what he said to me. I know how he's moving in me, and I know how he's telling me to move. So how I see him may not be how someone else sees it, because my life is not their life. My situation is not their situation. My relationship with him is just that. My relationship with him. And religion will send you to hell. Relationship, and I teach my son that we don't focus on religion, we focus on relationship, because there are so many different religions. But if you have a relationship, that's what matters. that relationship with God is what's going to get you out of whatever you've gotten in when you really need
Mhm.
something. So I agree. And then
Mhm.
and people, for every facet, or people having a place in your life, that is gold. That's platinum.
Mhm.
Everyone should have a place
Yeah.
in you when you need certain things, having someone to call. That way you're never depleted, because so many people can pull, but who's going to do the pouring, or who can you call? And being in position, being vulnerable enough to make a call, to have someone, because sometimes we can put ourselves in positions where we're so stuck in what we've been in, we're not open to receiving. So that's a whole nother topic
Mhm.
on its own, just being able and open, to, reach out to people and having individuals. Let me see if we
Mhm.
have um, any more questions. Um, Brent said, great perspective, great interaction. He said he is super proud of us both. Um, thank you.
Thanks, Brett.
Thank you so much. Um, Miss Kelly, she said, great info. So we got things coming from both sides. One I'm pinning, one I'm talking about. Um, Doc, I pinned your website in the comments. I'll go back and add some more information. I also pinned your book into the comments. For those of you on my regular Facebook page, if you want to go to the unmuted page, and turn the little, wait, can you turn something on? Not sure. Follow us on Unmuted. We're also on YouTube as well. We'll have this uploaded. But if you're on my regular Facebook page, go over to the unmuted page and you can see some more of the comments, and you can also see the website that's pinned, www.mgconsultation.com. The book, Armed and Dangerous, a collection of triumphant testimonies, workbook by Dr. Maranda Griffin. We're going to put some more literature, or some more things in the comments, so you can reference back in them. And anytime you want to pull, please share this post, this video, come back and watch the replay. Make sure you jot down the information. She does life coaching, people. She is open. Are you open? Are you taking clients? Okay, she is
I
taking clients,
am.
people. It will change your life. Look, I still use my stuff. I still have my binder. I update. I use mine. I wouldn't do some of the stuff that I do if it wasn't for the teachings and the what I received up under you. So, like I said in the beginning, I adore you more than you know. I reference you more than you know. So let's see. Make sure we don't have anything else. Ms. Tisdale said, "Awesome words, Dr. Griffin. Awesome words." So there are several people on the other page that have been commenting regarding your conversation on tonight, and it was. I hope it felt like a conversation and not just a Q&A. We're really having a conversation. So, Doc, I'm going to put you in queue. Don't leave. Hang on. I'm going to um, come back to you in just a minute.
Okay.
Okay, it was a great show. A great show. I want to thank you all for tuning in to episode number 4, well, season 4, episode number 1 of Unmuted, Adulting and Adoption. If you know someone that has dealt with this, feel free to share. Feel free to share. Reach out to Dr. Miranda, or you can reach out to me. If you know someone that may need further discussion, different resources, we do what we can where we can. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in again with us on tonight. For those of you that have rocked it with me for all 3 seasons, thank you for coming back. If this is your first time tuning in to Unmuted, I want to thank you for coming on tonight, why ever you came on, however you came on. Thank you so much. We are on YouTube now, and we do have the Unmuted podcast. So later this episode, you can watch the replay on Facebook. You can also tune in and catch it on YouTube and the Unmuted podcast. Thank you again for tuning in. We'll see you the same time, same station next week at 7 p.m. for another topic, another special guest. Please, please be safe. Have a great night. Thank you all.